Hey Tony, it's Friday. And of course, different week, different spot, because that's just a recurring theme here. So, I'm in Boston. As I told you before, because we have the trial competition this weekend. We had 2 trials today, and it turned out pretty well. I don't actually remember what your question of the week was, Tony, so I do apologize, but it's been a crazy week. I watched your video on Tuesday. Haven't had a chance to really do much else besides trial work. So, as I mentioned before, I'm in Boston. And we had 2 trials today against 2 really good schools. Our first case today was against Harvard, because of course it was. And our second one was against Cornell, which I got a real kick out of. Tomorrow we're going to be up against Quinnipiac, which is in New York, I believe. I think so. They're a smaller school. They don't quite have the name recognition of the Ivy Leagues of Cornell and Harvard. But everything actually probably went pretty well today. Our first case today was against Harvard. The plaintiffs in this case were going first. Now, the way the competition is set up is there are teams of 4, and each team, well, with the team of 4, there are 2 people on each side of a case. So I myself was on the defense side of this case. So myself and one of my teammates, Sarita, ended up going in the afternoon today as the defense, and my other 2 teammates, Chris and Tonisa, ended up going this morning against Harvard. And the way it also works there is whoever's not one of the attorneys is the witness for that side. So for this case here, I was representing the defense, but I was also playing the plaintiff's expert witness. I was Dr. Epi Leonard, who was an expert in seizures and such and such and such. And the way we do it as well is, so there are 2 exams in a case. There are 4 parts to each case. The first part is the opening. Then you have your direct exam. Then you have a cross exam, and then you have a closing. I myself, and I also did the. I'm gonna go move that. I just put my hand there. I did the opening, and I also did the direct examination of the defense expert and the cross-examination of the plaintiff expert. Now, the way exams work, direct examination is when it's your witness and you're trying to have them tell their story, basically. Whereas when you're cross-examining, you're asking questions of the opposing counsel's witness, trying to make them look ridiculous or trying to make them lose credibility in front of a judge/jury. And so our first trial today, like I said, was against Harvard, and it was rough. Harvard was really good, but of course they're Harvard. Chris, say hi to my little brother Chris.
Hello.
I don't know if you saw him. I didn't have it set up properly, but yeah, Chris is my roommate.
Whoa.
He's also a pretty good friend of mine. We've been on the team. We've been working together for 3 years on several different projects.
Yeah, I think we started working together
It was 1L year because
first semester of 2L year, I think.
Well, no, we were also 1L year. We were in the same legal writing class.
Yeah.
And I think I might have had I didn't have my trial against you, but
No, I went up against Rudiak.
Was against Rudiak. Still, it's been a couple of years. Him and I have worked together on multiple projects, and this was the last one, which is kind of interesting and weird. But
That's true.
he ended up him and Tonisa ended up going against Harvard this morning. I was actually Chris's witness as the expert, and so our coach actually said it turned out really well. So we were going against Harvard, and I didn't give them any wiggle room. They kept asking questions, and I kept basically refuting them. So John actually ended up sending a message through saying that Harvard's cross-examination of me was not effective because they kept spinning their wheels and didn't really get too much done. So that was good. But Harvard, I'm pretty sure Harvard won. Harvard was really good. Their expert witness was spectacular. We could tell.
Tony's being really hard on herself about that brand hurts, and there's not much she could have
there was
done.
nothing she could have done. That he was excellent.
It really was.
Like
It was good. It was a dirty game.
It was certainly a dirty game.
It was a dirty game
But
to play the clock like they did and really take advantage of the fact that she did not know how to properly control him.
Yeah.
But it was still.
And like as far as it goes, like the issue we had with Harvard's witness is the fact that although he was supposed to be playing a doctor, he was a lawyer who was playing a doctor, rather than what it's supposed to be kind of the other way around. Because you're supposed to like throw out what you know about the law out the door and be your expert. So they played dirty, but it's Harvard, and I expect no less. Honestly, the Harvard team was not bad. They were good, and they seemed to be relatively decent people. So I don't feel terrible about that one. But their expert witness, I think, won their case for them, which is unfortunate, but it's how trials go in this case. And then this afternoon, we ended up going against Cornell. It was myself and Sarita who were against Cornell. I directed our witness, who was played by Tonisa, and I crossed because she was our expert witness, and I crossed their expert witness, which was mostly all right, except for a small 3-minute window in which I was unable to set up a tripod. That took me a few minutes, and I was on a good rhythm. It kind of threw it off a little bit, but from what I gathered, I kind of hopped right back into that rhythm afterwards. Now, the thing that sucked about Cornell was the fact that the person who I was mostly against, who I will call my nemesis today, she knew the federal rules of evidence. She knew them. I mean, she knew them backwards and forwards. She knew every single subsection, and I'm like, I was good at evidence, and I'm...
It reminds me of the book in Harry Potter that went around trying to eat people. It's just like a very angry dictionary about the rules of evidence.
Yeah. That being said, I could tell that she hated my guts, because every time she objected due to this rule of evidence, I almost always responded with, Your Honor, this does not necessarily fall under that rule because it's such and such. There were only a couple times where her objections were sustained. And then when she was crossing my witness, I objected to her as well, because the way I looked at it was like, you know what? You were awful to me. I'm going to be awful to you. I was not fair. And I would object even if it wasn't a great objection, just to throw her off. And the good news is most of my objections were sustained. So that was good. But as far as it goes, I think we lost to Harvard, which doesn't bother me that much. Right? The Cornell one, I'm not sure. I like to think we won, but I think that one's going to be a tight one. I think a lot of it depends on how we do against Quinnipiac tomorrow. So that's Chris and Tonisa are going to be.
I think one of us won, depending on how. I really feel like it comes down to if they rule on the case. Harvard won. They rule on lawyering. I think you guys might have beat out Cornell, though.
I don't know. My issue is the facts were pretty in favor of the plaintiffs in this one.
Yeah.
Which sucks. So we'll see. But against Quinnipiac tomorrow, we're gonna have to just beat them down tomorrow, and then see where it goes from there. So Tony, my question for you is, have you ever wanted to visit Boston? It's a pretty cool city, and the weather's pretty miserable here today, but it's a pretty cool city. So Tony, that's my question for you: have you ever wanted to visit Boston? And if so, when do you want to do it? Because I only lived an hour and a half away. Tony?
And my question to you, Tony, is why in the hell would you ever want to visit Boston?
Tony, I'll see you on Tuesday. Later, bro.